Flower Design School. I hope you're going well. I just thought I'll give you a little demonstration of a glued wrist corsage today, because I am thinking this is a little market gap and is something quite convenient to have up your sleeve, so to speak, as a little option to instead of the wiring mechanics that we generally use for the wrist corsages. So it's a very fast way, very easy to get your head around. It's just really requires a couple of things. Part of it is obviously the hot glue gun, so you're using a hot glue gun today for this particular design. You can use cold glue, which comes in these kind of little tubes. I would recommend, if you wanted to use the cold glue, to have a little bit extra time, because it does take time to adhere and get actually tacky. So you have to apply it first, and then you have to wait a while, and then you have to then assemble it together. Whereas with a hot glue gun that I'm using today, it is so much more, it's faster and much more efficient. Okay, so I'll show you what I'm actually doing, what I need for it. So we need a base ribbon of sorts. So that's going to be the ribbon that gets then attached to the wrist and gets tied either with a bow or knot on the side. You can make it a little bit elaborate, like I have done a little bit of a special one with 2 layers of ribbon. I have used an organza ribbon as well as a lace ribbon here, and I'm just placing them on top of each other like so. So that's going to be our base, but because we're obviously gluing, and this is all very transparent and obviously sheer in the fabric, it will need a bit of substance underneath to not have the glue go through the design. So what I'm using here is just a plain satin ribbon in this case. It could be a taffeta ribbon or any of that kind of thing. You want to cut yourself around about 10 centimeters of that stronger ribbon, and you're going to place it just below the middle line of those 2 ribbon ends. So you want to try to find out where the middle is, where the center is, and lie it flat. And then you're placing this other ribbon just below it. Give it a little bit of hot glue to start you off with, and bring that hot glue through the middle of that ribbon as well, like that. And then you're placing the 2 ribbons on top. In some cases you're just having 1 layer, and that's okay. So we're just adhering it at the moment, and then we're going to place a bit of hot glue on either side here, and we're bringing them in, making sure we don't glue our hands or fingers. It's a quite hot scenario, so please be mindful and careful there. And we're just going to bring these up and close it. So you've seen that I haven't put the glue right on the very edge of the ribbon here, because when you push onto it, it obviously spreads out a little bit. And if you were to have it right on the corner, you may actually burn your fingers whilst you're placing pressure on it. So you want to make sure you're just a little bit careful there, and you have your little pocket kind of ribbon around this long ribbon base here. So this is going to be our little platform that we're going to glue onto, and we're working all our products that we want to use for our wrist corsage from the bottom up onto this base. So it's going to be glue, 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 and glue. We can use ivy leaves. I actually prefer ivy leaves to most of the other leaves, because I think it's a quite pretty shape, but often I do have a little bit of a mixture of leaves of potentially 2 sorts of different types of greens, or I could use a ruscus leaf as well, which is these ones here, the Italian ruscus version, so you can take leaves of these off. Sometimes you might find that the leaves are a little bit too long, and you can just then trim the base off a little bit and make them a fraction shorter, so they don't protrude quite so far out. Keeping in mind that this will be wrapped around just a small wrist or larger wrist depending, but the wrists are always quite a small surface, so we don't want to make it too much of a plate. So keeping in mind how big this will be and is going to be once it's all coming together. So you could possibly lie it out on your table and have a little play with it first before you're actually doing the gluing, and have a little sort of plan ahead, and this is how it's going to be, or maybe not, yeah, and possibly taking the leaf shorter, etc. Another nice leaf, if you're keeping it with the greys, maybe like a grey foliage or bluey foliage, you may want to use something like a gum or tetragona nut foliage. This one here is just a little gum part. This one here is obviously the tetragona. And small leaves like these will be just fine. Not always will you find them being appropriate in size. You obviously have to do a bit of a hunting around through the shrub or through the bunches that you're getting at the wholesalers and see if you can find the right sized ones. Okay, so always smaller is better really, because you don't want to make it too cumbersome in size. Okay, so we're starting off gluing. For all the glued leaves that we're doing, as a very start, we want to make sure that all the stems are completely cut off. So we're going right at the base of that leaf and cut that off as trim, as flat and flush as possible there. So we have nothing but the leaf base to worry about. So I'm going to just do the greens and greens, and I may just use a couple of the ruscus leaves as well as the ivy leaves. So you can cut them all at once if you like, put them on top of each other, cut the base off, and you're just left with the leaf and in a bit of a shorter version. So I'll be doing a little bit of an alternate kind of method of application. So what I'll do, put a little bit of glue just on the base here and come to the rim or edge of that little square here and place it in like so. And I'm going to alternate my leaves. So you can see I'm really only just gluing down here. I don't want the glue anywhere else, but on the very bottom of the leaf. So with hot glue, you'll find that you're going to have burn marks on it coming through on the other side through that heat that is obviously there. So we want to make sure we don't see any of that once the design is done and finished. So I'm just gluing. A little bit is plenty, and applying. There we go. So that takes about 6 or so leaves. In some cases you may need an extra one. In some cases you may need a little bit less. But I think if you have this kind of size of leaf and you do a little pattern like 1, 1, 2, 2 or something, then it just is quite a sufficient amount. So again, we can have a little look here and what that would roughly turn out to be in size. So that's your base there. And in some cases you want to go straight into the flowers from here. In other cases you want to do a little bit of filling. So you could have like a little bit of a, so to speak, a little buffer zone or a little spongy kind of area just below the flowers afterwards. So the flowers will be planted later. So you could do something like, say, these little spiggy bits of the leucodendron, tiny little leucodendron flowers or ends. I'm not sure whether they're flowers. I don't think they're flowers, botanically speaking. But yeah, you're just going to have these little high leaves of the very tip of the leucodendron, and you could use those quite short and just have them sitting around. And generally speaking, if you know me, I like my threes. So I would do 1, 2, and 3 here. Yeah, for instance, as an option. Other way to do it would be something like an actual filler material. So it's a colored floral filler, a colored floral filler that you can place in here. And in my combination that I was actually hoping to do with the purple orchids later, I think this purple would be a very nice addition. You could also have this popping through as well. Another alternative to a filler material would be just little small buds of another flower that could maybe sit here in amongst the whole thing. And obviously our well-loved gypsophila would be another one here, of baby's breath pieces. In some cases as well, when you have these kind of fillers, you could take them and use the stem as is and to put a tiny bit of glue on the end of the stem and then place it straight on. But you'll find that often enough you'll want that bundle to be just a little bit more prominent and stronger, which then means you'll be taking a little tiny bit of wire, in this case obviously 26 gauge here for that soft smallest amount of product and lightest product, and you cut that 26 gauge wire really short. But then what you want to do to get more surface for the glue is you're bending it back over. So you can see there's a little hook on the end there that you want to just then place the glue onto. So you have a bit of a surface with the glue that you can then place and it sits nicely. So what I'll do, I might just do a little bit of that jip, because this is maybe a bit more of a product that would require that little bit extra technique. So you can see. So I'm going to just wire some more. And even though you're not meant to be wiring so many things in here, you really are only wiring these 2 or 3 bundles that you may be requiring, and the rest is just straight as it comes. So in this case, it's just holding my bundle the way I want it and making it a little bit easier to apply it. Okay, so I'll do a little combination. Why not? Why don't we? So we'll put a little bit of the leucodendron in here. So just a little bit of glue on the end of the stem and then pushing it down. Now if you at any stage feel a little bit scared with the whole glue being so close to your fingers, you can obviously use a tool of sort, like your, this is all a bit splattery, a tool of sort like your scissors or something, and you can just push you know, the handle against it, so you're having your hands away from it a little bit further. In some cases you might want to put a little bit of a ribbon throughout it, and that would be now a good time to do the ribbons just underneath as well, if you were to place that. Yeah, generally you match the ribbon with the base ribbon a little bit. So let's just do a bit of both. So we'll do the jip, and we're also going to do the leucodendron. So you can see just on the base here, and I place it, and I'm trusting this glue to adhere, because there's enough glue here that I've used to blob enough in towards the base area there, and it's just going to anchor itself. Tiny little bit of pressure as you go, but you don't have to force it too much. It will sit happily without too much force. So now you've got that 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3 scenario there. Yeah, awesome. And I'm going to just put a little bit of that purple in, just because it is pretty to go with that purple that I've planned, those orchids. You can see some of the glue sticks are a little bit stringy, like this one here, and it requires me to do a little bit of twirling on the end there when I've finished with the glue, so I don't have too much of the hair, so to speak, coming out of that glue gun. So I'm just going to place 3 or so of those ones in. The beauty of this is that this is not necessarily, or doesn't have to be necessarily, your very last, you can even use a stick, have a look. This doesn't have to be your very last thing. You can just say, okay, I'm building it up, and I can always add a little bit more later on. Yeah. So generally what happens when we do the flowers now, because now we've got a beautiful little bed of greenery and filler, we can use the flowers that are lower first, and we place them possibly a little bit amongst, and that could be something like those buds, because they are that little bit smaller and they sit happily into those outer levels. And then we're going to concentrate onto the center part here with the bigger blooms. So generally you have 2 to 3 focal blooms that you're going to place in the center. That could also be a lovely little spray rose of sort, and your smaller things are dragging a little bit further to the outer rim, if you like. Yeah. So now I'm going to put that little bit of the glue along the stem of the bud, and I'm just going to place it in. And you'd be like, oh, now I've been learning all this wiring and it takes so much time, and now Iris shows me this design mechanics that takes a fraction of the time, and it ends up being amazingly cute and so fast and efficient. So with the orchids here, we're going to take the stem completely away. Look at that string of that glue. Here we go. So we're taking that little, like, completely off, so we don't have any residue of the stem there. And now we're gonna just plant it into there. Now if we feel like, oh, actually maybe I should put a little bit of white in the middle, because I just want to repeat that material a little bit, I might do that first before I place my flowers. Okay, so now I'm going to do the gluing on the end, on the base here, and down on the nose of that orchid, and I'll place it in a little bit upright-ish, so it's not getting too flat. So number 1, and that way you won't see any glue marks either. This back area here is not going to show up any glue marks. 2, and a little bit of pressure, and 3. Now even that glue coming over the end where you've just cut the stem off actually seals the moisture in as well, so it's going to keep the orchid happy and fresh for longer. So now we have this little trilogy in the middle, and it looks rather adorable, and that little bit of white just helped to finalize and clean up all those little smaller fillers, cleaned up the base so we don't actually see anywhere into the design and how it's been done. All the mechanics are hidden, so to speak. So this is the ideal world outcome. So you have a little bit of raise, but you're not raising too high. You've got a bit of body, and you've got a little bit of playfulness all the way around the edges. So you've got the color really coming right down towards the leaves. So when you then wear it, or when this person wears it, she will have it straight, flat, but still having a little raise there in the design. Now, this is the final product for now, but again, you could obviously have variations, multiple variations of this, but this is sort of the idea. The only thing that you need to worry about or have to remember when you're doing anything hot glued is that you will not have the opportunity to spray it heavily with water after it has been assembled, because the water and the hot glue don't mix very well. So if you have the water going onto the hot glued surfaces inside, they may actually peel the hot glue off, which means the whole thing could possibly fall apart or get loose. And you don't want that to happen. So you want to make sure that you're preparing your materials to an optimum quality and state on freshness and perkiness, like these products. And once they're cut, and applied in here with the hot glue, you will not have it have to mist it again or spray it again. It will still keep fresh. For the packaging, you can get some of these clams, little packaging things that you can get at the wholesalers quite easily. And what I generally do is I use either just a little bit of paper or tissue or something that suits the colors that I've been given or I've been using, and I'll just place it in there. But sometimes you find these little wraps around the roses when you get those imported roses, and it's just a little bit more cushioning, and sometimes I place that just in amongst that whole thing here like so, and just give it a little bit extra softness for underneath. And I place my corsage centered like that, and I'll just wrap the ribbon on the other side, on either side, and just place it to one side, and that will actually hold the whole thing a little bit together as well. And I'll just wrap it around on both sides. I should really go from the end, but it doesn't matter. It's a little bit sticky with that lace in it. There you go. And I'll just wrap that under, tuck it a little bit under, tuck that a bit under, and then it looks all rather cute. And I'll close it up, and generally I just use a little bit of my ribbon that I have been using in my design, and I close it up that way. So I'll just bring it underneath and make a little bow or just a little knot on one of the sides. Bring it to the side a bit so I can see into it, and I'll do my little bow or knot, and then you can possibly slide your business card underneath there, and you've got it ready for your customer. So I hope you enjoyed that, and it gave you a couple of little tips, and why not try that one out and see how your gluing version goes, but do watch your little fingers. Thanks for watching. Take care.